have a full day of presentations from a variety of topics. We are going to be giving you some updates from our office. We are going to talk about IPP. We're going to give you a little update of our upgrade, where we're at with that. We're also going to give some talking points on G-invoicing. Now that you guys have been in G-invoicing, what does it look like? What does it mean? How do you handle your transactions? So we're going to go over those things as well. Matthew Stewart's going to present on some financial reports that we use or that we send out to you guys to use. So tomorrow's going to be a really good day of just a variety of topics. On Thursday, I've introduced something new this year. What I've done on Thursday is I am opening up 6 different sessions for you guys to join in. And in the invite, the email link I sent out, the session breakout details are there. There's also a way for you to fill out a survey and let us know which sessions you'd like to attend. But those breakout sessions are really for you. In our quarterly calls, I get a lot of questions on, well, have you heard of anybody doing this? Or how would another agency handle that? And so what I want to do is I want to pick out topics like, for instance, one of our sessions is going to be on reports. And I want you guys to talk to each other and kind of learn from each other on how you use our reports. We'll have some facilitation questions that we can kind of guide the conversation along, but it's really a time for you guys to share with each other, maybe do a little bit of networking, meet some folks from the other agencies, but really just a chance for you guys to bounce things back and forth on a variety of topics on Thursday. So I hope the Thursday sessions will be really beneficial to you guys. I'm really looking forward to that new opportunity available. The last thing on the agenda, just before we get started, is if you will go ahead in the chat box here on the Google Meet screen, go ahead and just record your agency name. If you have multiple folks from your agency, that's fine. We have an attendance tracker, so I can kind of see who's who. But if somebody will just drop their agency name in, that way we know who all is accounted for today and within the various agencies. With that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Paulina, and she's going to get started. And I know Paulina and Judy will welcome questions, so feel free to ask something if something comes up, or several of us will be monitoring the chat to try and get questions answered there. So, all right, Paulina, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Leslie. And Judy, did you want to start this off, and then I can get the report to the Pentaho window pulled up?
Sure, absolutely. Well, welcome everyone. We're happy to present this Pentaho review again for you. If some of you may have attended once before, but we are going to recover that for you. And for those who weren't available to attend our last meeting, this will be new for you, and hopefully you'll get some good information from this. Pentaho is a reporting platform that behind the scenes pulls all of the data from the MSA application, and it combines that and puts that into various reports and data fields for you to be able to use to pull down queries depending on what you're looking for. It could be for expenditures or obligations, or G-invoicing queries, whatever the case may be, deposits. All of that data is going to be in Pentaho, and we're going to go through showing you some access to Pentaho, the various reports and what you will see and how you will navigate through that. And we want to make sure that you're comfortable with this. We also, like I said, like Leslie said, we will invite questions. Anytime that you have a question, you can let us know. And we are going to cover, we've got a couple of questions that came in prior to the training for some different items. We will cover that at the end of this session today. And if you all have questions that you think of after the fact, please send those to me, Judy Gonzalez, and Paulina Young, and we will get back with you with the answers to those. And if it's something that's not specific to you or your commissioner board, we may go ahead and send out something and share that as points and tips at a later date once we compile all that. So there will be some items coming out after the training immediately following that, but look forward to some additional emails should we get some good questions out there that maybe we didn't cover, or something that needs to be going into more detail. We will be happy to share that with you at a later date, but look forward to that. So going forward with the next slide. So there's two ways to access Pentaho. And you can go through, if you have access to MSA, you can go directly into MSA, and it is under the utilities menu. Now, just know that, MSA, you can program that to, some people have the menu board on the left-hand side of their screen. I have mine across the top, and that's where these slides are showing that. So there's different ways to format that. Under utilities, you will find that. There's also a way to access Pentaho directly without going into MSA. So once you've been given access, when you log in, you'll of course go into the utilities, and it does take a few minutes for the background to populate. Once that does come up, you will see the screen that Paulina is sharing with you now. There's multiple menus over here. We've got browse files, which is access to all of the reports that are out there now that are available for you. You can create new, and then the documentation, which is another field of reports and different things. However, that's not something that we normally use in any of our day-to-day access. Typically what we're doing is we are going through the browse files, and we were going through our reports, and we're getting the canned reports that are already there. We want to make sure that these reports that are available to you will cover and pull all of the data that you're looking for. So this is where you're going to land when you get in there and you browse files. You're going to see a list of folders. And then if you click on a different folder, you will see the subcontents of that. Just know that as a client, your screen, you won't see as many of these files. Looking at the browse files presentation, you will see the highlighted, the ones that you would see as a client. So it is limited, but you do have the information, and the reports are available that you would need to pull your data. And again, here is the available reports that you will find within that screen. Go to the next slide. And here's again, here is the external services all clients folder that you would see these various reports in, the highlighted ones, and we are going to defer to that one. The highlighted report that Paulina and I use for basically all of our queries is the general query VAT. And that data report will pull in all of the fields for any type of query that you are wanting to pull and get information on. As I mentioned, you can, it'll pull in everything for your fund, the year, the accounting period, if you so elect to choose that option. There's multiple options in there. Pauline, if you want to click on that. So you'll open the report, and it does take a second to load, so you have to be patient with Pentaho. Okay, so I'm going to let Paulina go from here. This is the report and the query, and she's going to navigate and show you how to utilize these fields to obtain your data that you're looking for.
Yeah, thanks, Judy. So when I was opening this up, I kind of got ahead of myself, I believe. But in order to open a report, it's very easy. You go to Browse Files, where I was, which is where you will also be able to access. Then you go to General Query VAT. You can either double click or you can click Open, as you can see right here in the presentation as well. And then once you have that open, this is kind of what you'll see. You might see a different fiscal year. You might see a different accounting period and a different fund, but this is generally the way that it looks. This is the edit tool up here. You can open up this report and it'll have these already pre-populated, but you can select different things that you want on the side. So right here, we have that the system default is 500. You can change this to whatever amount you want. I'm obviously not going to do that because, as you saw, it does take a little bit sometimes for Pentaho to think and give you the report that you want. I'm just going to leave it at 500, but you can move that to 10, you can move it to 1,000. And this is just for what it shows here. It's not for the report itself. So if your report has 10,000, it's not going to show 10,000. It's just going to show 500. So you can move that to a 5 if you want. So it doesn't take as long to populate. But you can see right here, you can edit the fiscal year. You can, oh, it's thinking. You can edit the fiscal year. You can delete a field. You can move up a field. So right here, edit, delete. You can move up. You can move down. And you can indent. So these are and or kind of separators. So if you indent something, it moves it kind of below into an or statement, and you can keep indenting. And but we wouldn't suggest that you do that because it can get a little messy sometimes. So right here, you can see these are the report parameters, and right here is the available fields for this data. You can see here in the little funnel, it has 3. Which means that there's 3 different fields that we're looking for right now. I could move a mountain here if I so wanted to. I could move different things. I could move the region code or the title. So that's something that you can control. And to remove a field, you just have to delete it. And if you decide that you want it back, you can always come back here and put it back in here as well. So if you delete a field, it doesn't mean that it's deleted forever. It just means that it's not a field that you're using currently. If you're familiar with pivot tables in Excel, it works almost the exact same way. It's just, in Pentaho. So if you're familiar with pivot tables, this won't be as complicated to understand because it is very similar. Most of the information, like Judy mentioned, that you would want is located in this back query. As you can see here on the fields, there are a myriad of fields that are available, and it doesn't mean that you'll need every field. However, Judy and I do prefer to have all the fields available because it's better to have things that you might not need than to say, oh, I wish I would have this field and then have to come back to the report and add it. So that's why we do have basically every single field populated in here. That way you can open it up in Excel and pivot your data the way that you want it to be pivoted. So once this query is done, once you have the data that you want, right here, obviously there is no data because this fund doesn't have any activity for 2024. But you will see some data here if you have some data in that specific year, which you should. And we do suggest that you are making sure that next time this query is needed, that you save it as such. So in order to save this query, we suggest that you save it to your personal folder, then edit those filters to meet your needs, because this specific query, this one, for example, is already saved. I saved this query, but you'll come into this query, which is a general query VAT, which will have these already pre-populated in here. But once you go in and edit what you want, we do suggest you save it to your personal folder, and we'll touch upon how you can do that in the saving reports section. But going back to this report, if you want to say add another accounting period, for example, you can see right here, if you also have the presentation open, if this is a bit too small, you can see that right here, we can select from the list. You have 2 options. You have select from the list or specify a condition. Right now, this is specifying a condition, but I always suggest that if it's available and it's something that you can use, to use a list, because the list pulls from the data that is already available in the report, which means that it's valid data. If I were to put here an 05 with a space, for example, it wouldn't pull up anything under 05 with a space because there is no such thing as an 05 space accounting period. So if you can't select from a list, again, we suggest you do that. It's very easy. You come in, you just select what you want. You can select multiple things. You can control click, as most of us are used to doing, shift down if you want, but in this situation, I'll do O3. And then I do want to bring to your attention as well that this has two different parameters. There's included and excluded. I personally have not used excluded ever. It defaults to included, but this means that the data that I get is basically going to be all of this, but O5 and O3. But I suggest that you obviously do the included, which is defaulted to that. But if you do need the excluded function, it is available to you if that's something that you would want. So right here, I do mention the extra space, that O5 space, there's no such thing, so you would not get that data. But then O5 from the list and O3, if I wanted to add O3 to my list, then I could go ahead and add that and click OK. And then once the report starts thinking, it will now show O5 and O3 in my accounting periods. So you'll see right here, we have O5, O3, and our accounting periods have been updated. If I change my mind and I don't want O3 anymore, I can just go in, edit, and remove. So just take it back. And just put it back into the available pool, basically. We'll go back to OK, and you'll see that I won't have any more data because there is no data in O5, but there is some data in O3 for this specific fund. So now that I have my report, this is the report that I want. I like this report. I want to come back to it. I don't want to have to go through filtering down to the fund, and I don't want to have to go through and do the fiscal year again. So I want to save this report. And in order to save this report, you can't save the report as it is right now, unfortunately, but you can save as. So to save as, all you have to do, at first we have to download it. Sorry about that. We have to download the report if that's something that you want to do. If you want the CSV. So you would download the report. And once the report is downloaded, you should see it in your downloads over here. You'll see right here that I downloaded this specific report. Depending on what browser you use, if it's Edge or Chrome, you should see something similar as this. I know Judy uses Edge and hers looks very similar to this, that there's a little kind of repository of places where she has her stuff saved. I don't have it set up to open automatically, but if that is a setting, then as soon as you download it, it will open up. And we do recommend you download it as a CSV. If you download it as an Excel workbook or a 97-2003 workbook, sometimes the title bar, so the title field to all of these, just come through kind of weird. They don't format properly. So CSV is more of a raw data. That's as raw as you can get when it comes to Excel. So just
Yeah.
Yep,
And also,
CSV.
yeah, and if you save as Excel, you will get multiple digits after the period, like for the
Right.
cents, you'll see I think 6 digits, 6 characters. So it just comes over as a cleaner data download. If you use the CSV, it's more, it's a better format for you to use. And then of course, once you export it, you'll want to immediately save it as an XLSX version, so that if you are going to manipulate the data, maybe, freeze cells, put a pivot table in. If you save it as a CSV and you've done all that work, you're going to lose all that data. It has to be in Excel to save those formatting options.
Correct. Right. So I do have that in here, and you can see that this specific file I did save as an XLSX when I downloaded it. But we do have in our presentation, we do comment that once you download the report, that you copy the original tab to save the sanctity of the data. So this is something that Judy and I are very used to doing already when we download a report from Pentaho. But you get your raw data. If I had data here, then it would be populated here. But we don't start working from this data immediately. What we mean by saying copy the original data, the original tab, we mean to move or copy and then move to end and create a copy. And I usually rename this to my working file or just working. And this is where I go ahead and do all my edits. I add my title bars, etc., my filters if I need to, because that way, if I need to go back to my original data, I haven't lost it. So it's still here. So I could just go back and copy this again if everything is completely messed up in this specific file. Or if I want a pivot table, it'll open up in a new tab. So one thing to note that we don't have included in this is that when you download your data from the back query, there is a column, is CT, that for some reason it is currently empty, and we're not entirely sure why that is. We suggest that you delete this, so all of this gets added to your filter if you do add it. Or if you're doing a pivot table, for example. So if column CT is usually the one that is in there that's empty. So if you want to go in there, just delete it ahead of time, which we're already used to doing. But you might download this, do your pivots and stuff, and realize that you don't have this data over here. That is some reason.
Yes, you'll get an error. If you try to
Yes.
do a pivot table with a blank header, you will receive an error. So just know if an error pops up, that is why, because it's looking for, it has to read that data in the subsequent rows after that title. So if there's a blank row there, and like I said, we've got someone looking into that as to why that happens.
Yes.
If you look in Pentaho, the way it's set up, the way that report was created, if you look in Pentaho, you'll see that those rows, if you scroll over, those are grayed out. Those are the ones that show. And then right there where it's white, there is an additional row put in there, or column, and we don't know why. But just know that does happen. Hopefully we can get that fixed for you so we don't have that. But I know sometimes I start working and I'm working in there and I copy my file and I'm working and I do a pivot and I get that error. It's like, oh, I forgot to delete that row. Or that column. So just remember that if there's an error, look for that first and then go from there.
Yep, that's where we're used to deleting that CT one. Or if we're getting an error, like Judy mentioned, we just go ahead and go in and delete it. And then our data should be fine after that. But this is what we suggest you do when you do download a report from Pentaho, because as you see, Pentaho does take a little bit to think. So having to go back in, maybe you closed out of all your windows and now you're working in Excel exclusively. Just that way you don't have to go back in and re-download the report. And it just saves you some time to already have your data here.
Because that will time you out.
Yes, it will. I keep tabbing into it so I don't get timed out.
Same
so
here.
now, yeah. So now into the save as. We don't have the save as here, but you'll see if I were to change this, for example, and add an O3, you should see a save as kind of floppy disk with a little pencil. And you would want to save as for that specific report, because that way you can save it under yourself and it'll save under your specific folder when you save as. And then once that's done, you can go ahead and go back to it when you're trying to open it again. Since I haven't changed anything here, it doesn't give me the option to save as, but I do want to show you. You can see right here in the presentation, it does give you an example of the way that it looks, and also for the export, it gives you an option for that as well.
And once you save it, you can name it to whatever file name you want that to be under. So, if it's, you can use your acronym, your fund, whatever the case may be, because the next time you go in, if you save that in your folder, you're going to be able to just open that up with your fund already pre-populated. I typically, depending on what I'm doing, I normally either get rid of the accounting period and look for the fiscal year and the fund, or if I'm doing a report specific to like payroll query or payroll reconciliation, I will go in and pull just the accounting period. But it's easier if you go ahead and save that with that accounting period in there. You may find the first couple of months of the year or even later in the year when you're trying to do some reconciliation, or you're looking for maybe you're looking for all of your deposits, or you're looking for a specific amount. Once you have that saved out there, if you go pull that query and you're looking for the full year, you can just delete that accounting period, and then you don't have to save the report, but that will be there for the next time, because you may not want, if you have a lot of activity on your fund, you may not want to wait and get 5,000 or 6,000 rows when you do that query. Right. So and it's a matter of preference. Like I say, depending on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something specific, there is an option for a document type. If you know what you're looking for, like an obligation or something, when you go in to do those, to the edit of the query, you can put in a specific document type and just pull that data. Or like I say, doing this type of query is going to give you every single thing that's available that's happened within that fund for the year. So if you're looking for something specific, if you're looking for, Paulina, like an XX or something like that, you can go in and add that. Right. But just know that when you do this for the first time and you save it, it's best to save it just like it is now, and then you can add and remove fields. That way, if you've removed stuff and you've added stuff and then you're having problems getting back to it, if you didn't save it, you can go back and start all over again and have that query with that same year and the counting period that's already out there. And then, like I say, and then you can save it multiple times. You can save it if you have, your fund and, fund XYZ, AP, or FY24. If you want to save it for, maybe you want to have just a separate report for just your obligations, you can go in and you can add that document type and then save it, with the document type like XX or obligation or whatever the case may be. So you can have multiple reports out there if you want to be able to access the various data that you want. Or like I say, for me, I typically just pull it all. I do a pivot table. I can copy one of those tabs into a new book if I'm doing a report and save that out there. But I have all of the data that's available out there, because if something comes up, I may, later may come up and say, oh, well, I need to know what the deposits were for this as well. And that has already been pulled. So the data is there without having to log back into Pentaho and re-pull that report.
Correct. So this is how you save as. Again, we should just use save as, but you'll see this right here. It's a little floppy disk with a pencil. And if you click that, mine's already defaulted to my own folder, but I suggest you just go to home and then click on your own folder. And this is where you would name this whatever you would like. So if I just name it the same, which I won't save it, but this is what you would do. You would name it what you want. So like Judy was mentioning, if it's general VAT query, maybe I just have obligations. So I could say 705 VATs and then obligations. For 705 VAT, maybe I'm looking at all just my G-invoicing obligations, or perhaps a payment. So like my X6s or my X8s or things like that. So I would suggest you put a name here that lets you kind of go back to it pretty quickly, and that way you don't have to re-pull the data every time. And you just click save. And then once you click save, it should be under your user folder. That if we go back over here, you click on yourself, you'll see right here, I have this report, 705 tax general VAT. And this browse files tab, you see me going back up here. Here you can kind of navigate through all the things that are available. So you can go back to your home, you can go back to your opened ones. Like once you come back here, you haven't lost anything, it's still there. You just have to come in here and go to the opened ones. So there are some different reports that are also available, different types of reports. You have the ability to create new reports. We just have this report kind of like already created for ease of use for you as the user. That way you don't have to create your own report and have to play around with all the fields and things like that. That can be pretty overwhelming when you're in Pentaho for the first time. But there is an availability for you to create more reports, but it is a like more intricate process, and it does require knowing a lot more about Pentaho and just being in Pentaho, day in and day out. Judy and I are in Pentaho all the time, but we do still kind of gravitate towards the VAT query. We do have to sometimes delve into the other data pools and different reports to see if we can create a different report, but we always come back to the same VAT query. But there's two types of reports that are available. It's the analysis report and the interactive reports, which you can see it under here, analysis, interactive, and dashboard. And the analysis reports provide you the ability to be able to create more visual reports, and they should be created when you're looking to look at data at more higher levels rather than more micro per transaction. And interactive reports give you the ability to create detailed look at the data. So if you are looking for specific transactions or specific things, those are able to handle larger amounts of data and they don't create visualizations as analysis reports do. You can see right here, this is the dashboard. There are a lot of options. We personally don't look at the dashboards very much. I don't know if you do, Judy. I don't believe you do.
Nope, I've never had a need to use that. And right. I am in Pentaho multiple times a week. So
correct. Yes, same. Yeah. So again, there is an availability for this. You can go through. I mean, there is no harm in going in and just looking at the different reports that you could create. Maybe you already know what data you're looking for and what totals you should be seeing. And maybe you can come into Pentaho and test and see what data pools and what reports you can create that give you that data that you're looking for. So if you're looking for a $50 total and this report gives you that $50 total, then you've created your first report. But again, the VAT query gives you that access without having to come through and just click through and look at all the different options that are available. But again, you can come through here and just see and click around and drag and make templates and things like that.
Yeah, and you can, for me, I prefer Excel. I'm an
yes.
Excel person. I can, create charts if I needed to, do pivot tables and various things once I export the data instead of, going through this process. But like Paulina said, if you're, it's a business objects platform. If you're comfortable with that and want to work in that, feel free to do so. Just know that it is a lot more involved to get the data that you're looking for. Whereas, if you're using a canned report, as they refer to them as, you've got everything you need, and actually, in most cases, more data than what you're going to even want or even aware is even out there in MSA. It's just an easier process to do that because you can get your data and you can start working your data and, like I say, do your pivot tables and do charts or whatever the case may be that you want to do to be able to get your export of your file. But we also do want to mention too, just know that when you do use that, the VAT query that we're referencing, it is showing all available accounting entries. So you've got not only your SGLs, but you've also got budgetary entries as well. So if you were looking at something and you did a filter by a particular document type or a transaction, just know you're going to have multiple lines with the same total because your entry is actually hitting multiple GLs and multiple budgetary entries. So that's why Paulina and I both tend to use the pivot table, because we're looking at cash or looking at a specific GL that we're trying to, get a total for or something like that. So just be mindful that, if you are pulling that query and you're looking at that data, that you're going to have multiple rows for the same transaction because you've got multiple budgetary and standard general ledgers that these transactions are hitting.
Yep, that's right. So just be mindful of that when you are pulling, because I look a lot at cash, for example. So I look at 1010, but I filter by 1010. I don't look at everything else because I'm looking for that specific entry under 1010 to make sure that it is hitting cash. So just be mindful of that when you do pull the report, like Judy mentioned. So 2 ways to create a new report. You saw one where I created new here, but then you can also create a new by clicking on File, as I'm sure a lot of you are used to, using this top bar to navigate. You can do an analysis, an interactive, or a dashboard report, that is something that you want to do. There are different ways to create an interactive report and different types of data pools that are available. So if we were to create one right now, I'll get this same window that tells me to select a data source. Again, you can come in and select different data sources, but the data source that is available for, say, the general query VAT, the general VAT query, you'll see right here that there's different ones available for you to use, and they all have different types of data. They all have different fields. So this, for example, is the trial balance right here. This is the cash. This is for budget. And you'll see if we were to go back to general query VAT that this, our data, is the VAT data. It's just all of our VAT data. But there's other things that we can pull from. So different types of data that we can pull from that have different fields. So these are the fields available for VAT data, and a different data pool has a different amount of fields that are available for it. So you might not see the specific fields available in a different data pool from if we were to select, for example, cash account or external services budget. It's highly dependent on the data that you select. And that's a big difference between the analysis and interactive reports. And interactive reports, all of the available fields are grouped together, and each field, whether it's an amount or a specific MSA Pegasus element, can be dragged into like this. So you just drag and drop. It's a lot easier to select the things that you want.
Yeah, you're going to get the same data return every single time, regardless of what your query parameters are. So regardless of, if you just put in your fund and your fiscal year, you're going to get every single thing that's out there, every type of budget entry, every field that we fill in, and when we're entering a transaction into MSA, you will see all those fields on that particular report. So that's why we default to that so much, because we don't know, sometimes when you're pulling those reports, you may start with, trying to identify specific transactions, and there may be something else that makes you, go in a little bit deeper and get more detail and more information. And having that already pulled in that GWA query is just going to save you time, and you'll get familiar with that particular report. And it's easy to manipulate the data once you export it into an Excel file and start working the data.
That's right. So I pulled here the same example that we have in our presentation for external services cash account. And you'll see here that the fields available here, for example, are completely different than the fields available for VAT data. And you have a different amount of fields. So this could have about 200 fields available, but general VAT data only has about 100. So it's just different data and more ways to kind of slice it up and get the data that you're looking for. And here you just like the same thing as in the other report, you can drag and drop different fields. You can select from the list, you can specify a condition. This is originally how the general VAT query was built, basically the same way. It was a report that someone added some filters to, and then it became the VAT query. And you can create kind of the same type of report, just with different fields, if that's something that you're looking for. But again, most of the information that you would need is under VAT query, but there's also other types of information.
Yeah, not only when you build a report do you have to put in the search criteria, you also have to tell what fields of data you want returned in your report.
Right.
So as you can see, there's nothing there. So you would have to not only do your report parameters, you would also have to do your fields that you want to see returned from that. So it is a more involved process. And like Paulina said, when this was created, it was created, with the parameters and also pulling every single field over and putting them into an alignment. And for some of you that are old timers like me, we used to have the Financial Management Information System, FEMIS, that we referred to it as. This query here really kind of replicates that query. So it's got, like I say, all the data that was out there in that format before. So like I say, we kind of gravitate to this one only because we're used to it, and it pretty much gives us everything that we may need. But like I said, and Pauline's going to go back to that other query and then show them how to put those rows in or the columns in. So you would have to, yeah. And for everything that you do,
yeah,
it takes,
everything.
it's a refresh every single time. So it has to pull in that data. So it does take a little bit longer, but if that's something that you want to do and you want to become proficient at, we encourage you to do so.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. Don't have to wait around for it. But yeah, if I were to drag all these over here, it would have to think for every single one. There is a way here to disable auto refresh, but once you add all the different fields, it would basically have to refresh for all of them. So it would take a lot longer than just selecting the general query. But again, definitely if that's something you want to do, you can 100% do that. There is an auto refresh feature available here, and it is auto refresh by default. So if you're perhaps working with something that's very large, with a lot of data, then I suggest you click this off and then refresh it once, but it will take some time at the very end.
And you can also hit cancel on that pop-up that came up. It does the same thing, but you have to do that for every single time that you want to make a change. It will just, you have to keep canceling that so that it doesn't like refresh every single time you want it to. Once you have all your data in there or you have what you need, then you click the apply filter button and that will pull your report data.
So we have here another slide on saving. I've already touched upon that, but you just click your save button, select your file name, you go to either your own folder or you go to home and then select your folder and you can save that in here in your own folder.
Yes, you will not be able to save the actual query itself in the public folder. It takes certain permissions to do that. So, if you try to save it, it's not going to save it. So just so you know, feel free to go out there and work with the data and, like I say, make some copies of that report if you're looking for different data and you want to, drill down to that. Or like I say, you can, sometimes I export the file and I end up with 20 tabs because I'm looking at cash entries. I'm looking at different types of cash entries, whether it's a deposit, whether it's a payment. And I just rename each one of those tabs with what it is I'm looking, what it is I queried upon. And that way I know, I can go back to any of those tabs and look at that without having to go to and keep pulling separate queries for each type of transaction. But it's really a user preference and what it is you're looking for and what kind of data you need returned.
Right. And here's some resources for MSA, for Pentaho and Citrix. Like if you can't access Pentaho through Citrix, or if you need your password reset for MSA Pentaho, then you can reach out to these numbers and this email right here if you have any questions about accessing, or if you have trouble accessing Citrix and Pentaho. All right. Any questions from the presentation and any questions that you perhaps had from the first presentation that we did last month, and maybe you're taking this again as a quick refresher?
Okay, well, we did have an email come in with a question about the trial balance and wanting to pull a Pentaho query that could match up to the trial balance. And so we've got that information there. I'm going to show you how to do that. If you receive the trial balance reports and you're wanting to find out what it is that makes up that detail, we've got a mocked up trial balance here. And then also we're going to show you how to get that data. Pauline, you can take it away.
Yeah, so we have a client that had a question about their trial balance and how to match this trial balance that they receive to a report so they could drill down into the totals that make these up. And we do see here that in external services branch under all clients, there is an all funds trial balance detail all APs report that you can select. And when you select this report, you're able to select your fund and the fiscal year that it's for. And I'll let this open up. But
Now, this report's pulling from a different universe, so it takes a little bit longer to pull the data. So and it looks just a little bit different than the VAT queries. But this is the way to be able to do that query
Hey,
to match
Judy,
up your balances. Yes.
in the chat box of this meeting, can you put the path of that report,
Sure.
the report name, just so folks can
Absolutely.
remember how to get back to it?
Yeah, and we wanted to, like I say, we will be sending out some information after the end of the entire client meeting probably on Friday with some information, and we can include that as well. But I'll also put it here in the chat. Let me pull that up, and I'll have that in there shortly.
yeah, and you'll see that it looks a little different, but it's still essentially the same. You do have your filters here. You have your different measures here is what this specific report is. You see that there's 100 fields available for this, but it's basically the same. You select your fund. So whatever fund that you are, you select that. And then the fiscal year, this is in 2018, but obviously if you want 2023 or 2020, 2021, you can select that as well. And these you can leave as they are because that is the data that's going to pull into the report here. And this is how the data pulls. It pulls all of these transactions that happened. And here we have our working file. So we copied this default. This is the initial data that pulls from Pentaho. We copied it to the working file. And we went ahead and deleted CT as we mentioned before. And this is the pivot table that results from that. And the way that this pivot table is set up is basically just all the values. So all the amounts for each month, and then just the general ledger accounts. This is usually how we set up the pivot table. So you can see 1010 here, 1010 1, 1010 35, etc. But you'll see that these totals right here match. So here's our 126,318, which is our fund balance with Treasury. Then we have 6180 and 955, and then 1.1 over here. And then if you get these two together, they equal the 5,015,324 that we see here. And you can see right here, here's 1165,631, which is right here. It's our receipts. And this is our total, our fund total right here. But this is all encompassing of this trial balance. And this should marry with your trial balance, this report. And if it doesn't, then that is definitely a problem. And maybe you perhaps removed a filter and you didn't mean to. So I would suggest you go back and take a look at the Pentaho report to make sure that everything is in, that you have all your months. You'll see we have balance forward, we have adjustments, which is AP 14, and our open fiscal year amount as well.
And also that was the pivot table that we did because it's encompassing, this was a particular report was from fiscal year 23, the end of the fiscal year. Right. So what we did is we pulled in the report, and as you can see on the bottom of her Excel file, there's 3 tabs. There's the original data dump that we exported. Then we have the working file, the one that we copied, and that has your detail that makes up those individual, all of these transactions that are lumped together by SGL. So just know that that's there. And if you're looking to, drill down and get the actual detail, then, that's what you're going to receive when you do the original export. And if you're trying to validate totals, then of course you can do a pivot table and, get that data combined by accounting period and get your totals from that. But if you're looking more for detail, you'll want to just look at your data, your original export file.
Yeah, and you can always just show detail here as well. If you're familiar with Excel and pivot tables, you can show the detail for this amount, for example, in 101035. I want to see what that makes up. And I'll see right here that here's all my amounts right here. And this is the original data. I hope that answers that specific question for the trial balance. And did we have another question?
There was a question in chat about, can we generate the trial balance by fund in Excel?
I'm having trouble understanding the question, as in downloading it from here and then opening it up in Excel, or?
Yeah, is that in regards to the trial balance that you're seeing on the PDF version? You want it in an Excel version?
Yes. Can we do in the Excel version for the one on the right hand side?
So that's it. So you receive that report from us every month, correct?
Correct. Yes. But
Okay.
I'm wondering, can we export it from Pentaho or JC?
I think there might be an option to download this report as a PDF, but also as a CSV, perhaps, I think, from MSA.
Yes, there is, and it is in that same folder. If you go back in Pentaho, in that same folder, because we did see that. Pauline, if you want to jump back into Pentaho.
Yeah.
In that same all client folder. And that is really small, so I can't really.
Is it the all funds trial balance detail?
I think I think it wasn't there just one that's just trial balance.
Trial
I know
balance summary.
There was two. Yes, I think it's the summary.
Yeah, so I think this one isn't under all clients, so we might have to move that over. But I think this might act as this specific monthly trial balance by fund.
And Leek, if that's something that you're interested in getting, I know the accountants send out the trial balances in PDF. They can run that in MSA in Excel for you. So that you can just reach out to your accountant and we can work on that.
Yeah, I think there is an option to download it as an Excel file as well as the PDF. So
yeah,
correct. Yeah, because I pull down all the trial balance reports for all the clients. So if you're wanting that, then we can pull that as well. So I will.
And then if Judy and Paulina find the report in Pentaho and put it in the all clients folder, then that would be one that you could run at any time without waiting on a month end or month to close for that report. So.
Yes, and just remember that there is a 1 day lag. So if you request that and it's pulled like now, it would not include anything that was processed today. It would be from the prior business day. So if we're looking at a trial balance for the month, it would be first of the month through close of business the prior business day.
Perfect.
Trevor, you have a question?
Yes. Hey, Leslie, Judy, Paulina, thank you for this this training. The question I have is, and it popped up, Leslie, when you talked about reports that you give us at the end of the month, because we get the org status report, which is basically a summary by object class for our agency. Is there because I know the VAT is it's a transaction level detail. Is there a report in Pentaho that would basically be similar to the org status report that can show you a summary by object class of where total obligation? Because I've tried to pull a report it's not in the VAT section, but when I pull that gives me a summary of obligations at a fund level, and when I go to pull in object class or part of the trade, it doesn't seem to pull in. Doesn't seem to show the data at that object class level on a summary.
You mean by SOC, right? So by right. So it's not called object class in reporting specifically. I believe it's called maybe cost element for the.
It's either cost element or activity.
Yeah, it's not object class, right? Object class is a number that's given to every transaction to see what month and what day it was put under, I believe. but
Oh, no, the
specific-
object class is like the type of.
I just mean in the
Yeah.
reporting environment. So like this object class here, like you'll see that it's like it says 611, 232 or something like that. But I think what you're looking for is a cost element, which is like J74 or HO2 or R22 or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So it's called cost elements. So if you see right here the list of all the cost elements. So if you were to open up the VAT query, for example, and then drag over cost elements, you can select a specific SOC in here, or you can put it in if you want in here as well. I don't know if you're looking at my screen.
Yeah, and also too, if it's going to pull that data in anyway, so if you just put in your fund and the accounting period or fiscal year, whatever it is you're wanting, you could then do a pivot by document type,
Mhm.
and then also include the object class in there as well. So you could see the individual lines, or you could, do a filter and pull in that data, but it's gonna come back in this GWA VAT query for you.
Mhm. And you said you've tried and you couldn't find the
No,
cost
I
element?
can touch base with you all on, because what I'm looking for actually is, because that's like transaction level. The org status report is like a summary
Right.
of everything. It's not like, it's not like I don't need like by transaction. That's too detailed.
Okay.
And the org status report is great. It's just I was like wondering if there was something like that I could pull live whenever I wanted to, as opposed to the monthly report. So
Okay,
I can
yeah.
touch base with y'all offline.
Yeah, we can definitely touch base on that and
Yeah.
see if we can get that running for you.
Thank you.
Could you show, I saw your question, Needy, in the chat. Could you show to run list of vendors for a specific agency? Includes, so did you do a fund? Did you do a edit the fund and try that to run just for your specific fund? And or were you looking for everything?
I was looking for everything, but specifically for our agency, the fun thing, which I actually just learned today, I didn't try that last week. And last week I was just trying to run the list of vendors, which I think is in all clients. And then it was in the browse file, all clients.
Right.
And now I'm actually even forgetting where it was.
It might have been VAT category data, perhaps, or VAT-based reports.
Yes, that's right. Yes. So would you think if I ran the report and use the fund status, that would only give me the list?
It would only give you any vendor that's been used by your specific fund. Yes. So if you kind of micro it down to your specific fund, then you should see just the vendors that have been used for transactions under your own fund.
Okay.
But you won't see, you might see like an address, but you won't see like any PII, basically any like TINs or socials or anything like that. It will just be like an address, for example.
Yeah, so vendor name, address code, a vendor number and address code, but it's
right.
It is PI. The PII, like I say, if it's a social security number, it is, we convert that over to a vendor number.
Right.
So you wouldn't see that detail. But yeah, I mean, the vendors are set up because we do have, the same vendors are used for multiple clients. So like,
right.
For example, US Bank, there's
Yes.
multiple US banks out there that are set up, and any client can post against that particular vendor for their fund. So the only way you're going to see a vendor, that have been used for you would be to go in and look at your fund and then just do that general VAT query. It'll pull down all the vendors that we've, processed to or against within the fiscal year. And you could go back and, look at another prior fiscal year if you needed to. But since vendors are not set up specific to a client or fund, if you pull vendors, they're just going to be out there. There's going to be a vast number of those.
Right.
Because they're not identified they're not going to that level when they're established.
That helps. And yes, absolutely. I think I got 600 worth of windows. So definitely.
Yeah. So definitely use your own fund. And then also if you're looking for specific SOCs, for example, like a vendor that was used only for a specific type of transaction. So maybe for all of your travel, you use D01, then you could do that and maybe do a pivot, or you could do it on the front end and do the cost element for D01. But you can play around with it by selecting your own fund.
Yeah, and also for vendors that are not federal, unless we've actually made a payment to them, or that we've had to set up a specific vendor code for an individual. Pretty much any vendors that are out there that are non-federal will show up as a non-federal vendor code. There's several of them out there that are used, so you may see different ones for different type of transactions, whether it's a revenue versus an expenditure. It just depends on what you're looking for, but there's not like if we get checks in for you that we're recording and we're doing a deposit, or that comes in either through the Collections Information Repository, CIR, or a check that is sent to us, not every single person that sends in a check has its own vendor code. So you may see non-federal on a lot of those if you're looking, especially at deposits. Whereas payments, if they're going out the door, money's going out the door, then there could be tax implications. You would see a specific vendor set up for that individual. So just be mindful of that, depending on what you're looking for or what you're looking at. The vendor codes, you may not see something as detailed as what you may expect.
Got you. Awesome. This is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
These have all been great questions. Do we have any more out there for folks on the phone? I'm looking over here at the screen on the wall, and I've got my monitor here, so. No other questions. Okay, well, thank you, Paulina and Judy. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to put together this presentation. I hope folks thought it was very useful, and hopefully it's good information. The key to Pentaho is just to keep using it. It's one of those that if you don't use it, you're going to lose it for sure. We've recorded this session. Latanya, if you want to go ahead, you can probably stop the recording now. For any folks that want a recording or have someone in their agency who might want to watch this back,